I love covering bold new flagship cameras like the Canon EOS R1, cameras with a bold reputation. The EOS R1, I'm told, will be the master of everything. And I've got the latest EOS R1 specs. I should have provided you with a full update yesterday when I provided the EVF specs. Today, I'll cover all the latest specs for the Canon EOS R1, including the EVF specs I covered yesterday. I'll also answer questions such as, how accurate are these rumors? Do they come from credible sources? Are they derived from prototypes? Or are they simply made up? Stick around after this short break for all the details. But first, please do me a favor. Follow me on Twitter, but most importantly, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything. It really helps this channel grow, and it helps you keep up to date on the latest news and rumors. Canon Rumors has helped us out by providing several EOS R1 specifications, some of them rated CR1 and some, well, contradicting each other. I'm going to go over what we know, what's likely, and attempt to fill in the blanks. But first, let's start with yesterday's Canon EOS R1 EVF specs. Yeah, 4,000 nits. Now, when I first saw that, I thought, well, maybe Craig had added an extra 0, making it 4,000. 4,000 nits for something where you're going to hold your eye up to the eyepiece, that seems awfully bright, really bright. But is it that ridiculous to expect that we could have 4,000 nits? You see, there's already a camera on the market released 2 years ago that has 3,000 nits, and that's, yes, it's the Nikon Z9. I'm used to working with devices outside in the bright sun, and usually a nit rate of around 1,500 normally covers everything off. You can see things clearly in the sun. So 4,000 nits, I'm not too sure about that. I haven't heard back from Canon Rumors or anything else to further clarify if this has been substantiated in any way. Now, Canon Rumors did say that all the EVF specs from yesterday, they're coming from an unknown source, which makes it a CR1, so they haven't been validated. But they do look good, and we're going to cover off the rest of the EVF specs a little bit later on, but let's start off at the top of the list, and that is the sensor. 45 megapixels, but it's going to be a stacked full-frame sensor. Well, I'm going to predict that it's going to have a stacked sensor after all, the R3, which sells for $5,500, initially selling for $5,900. Well, it has a stacked sensor, so I'd be really surprised for this master of everything not to have a stacked sensor. And as far as 45 megapixels, Canon Rumors are saying that most of the professionals that this camera is aimed at don't really want more than 45 megapixels. So as far as 80 goes, yeah, not going to happen on the Canon EOS R1. So Mark, if you were thinking we were going to get 80 megapixels or more, well, it looks like the Canon EOS R1 is going to be right around 45 megapixels based on what Canon Rumors is telling us. But things could change. Now, in terms of the image processor, there's one of a couple of things here. Canon Rumors hasn't talked about this, so this is one of those things I want to fill in the blanks. So let's imagine here, Canon could go one of two ways. They could take that Digic X image processor that was released some 4 years ago and put two of them in this camera. It's plausible, it'll give it more capabilities, but as we've seen from Apple with their M2 architecture, it's far more efficient to actually glue things together at the silicone stage rather than putting two processors in the camera. And not only does it, well, is it not as efficient, it also takes up more space. So I'm really expecting that we're going to see a new Digic processor, most likely called the Digic 11. And then, like Canon did with the 1DX Mark III, the same Digic X processor that came out in that camera, Canon's going to take it and put it in pretty well every other camera, with the exception of the EOS 100. Yeah, the EOS R100. I'm not going to talk. I know it's got an R1 in there somewhere, but it's the 2 zeros that make it absolutely the pants. So, what else do we know about the EOS R1? Well, it's going to have a slightly different ergonomic design. It's going to be bigger than the R3, but if you can imagine the Canon EOS R3, but bigger, well, we're going to take the same ergonomics and look and feel of the R3, but make it a little bit more bold and a little bit more bigger. So it will be able to handle a little bit more heat inside. Well, it'll be able to actually dissipate more heat, and that's the real key here. Once again, the EVF specs from yesterday are coming from an unknown source. It doesn't mean they aren't real, it's just we don't have any validation. So they're rated as a CR1, so don't get your hopes up too much. But if we look at these, they're pretty realistic. Now, we're talking about a size of 0.7 inches instead of 0.5 on the R5 and the R3. And I do like that extra size. I find that when I'm looking through the R5, the very edges of the EVF, I can't see no matter how I try to position my eye. And in terms of resolution, 7 point something million dots. Well, that's right in keeping with what we see with the competition. Although Sony does have everybody beat right now with 9.44 million dots, it's certainly an improvement over the R5 at 5.76 million dots. It's going to be able to shoot blackout free at between 60 and 240 hertz. At least I'm assuming it's going to be able to shoot blackout free throughout the entire variable range. And of course, 4,000 nits for the EVF. I'd be happy if the LCD had something like 1,500 nits or 1,600 nits, but the EVF? Now, this is one of those times where I might be completely ignorant. If there's anybody out there that would really demand and sees the benefit of having nits north of 3,000, then please let us know in the comment section down below, because while I laugh at this, there might be very good reasons for having nits of 4,000 or even higher. Let's just, 4,000, let's just stay there. The LCD is supposed to be much bigger. It's going to have an OLED display. Now, will it go up to 4 inches? Well, if this camera is that much bigger, then putting in a 4-inch really doesn't take up that much real estate. It's certainly plausible. But the only question is Canon going to take that EVF and give it a 4-axis LCD, much like the Sony A7R5 has? I really hope so. I mean, that would be terrific. I think that it makes everybody happy. For people working with telephoto lenses, being able to line things up directly through the LCD with that tilt screen. And then for the flippy screen, for those who are shooting, vlogging, or whatever you need for the flippy screen to come out, especially if it's larger at 4 inches, that's only 1 inch less than the Ninja 5. So that is a big deal. But we'll just have to wait and see. We don't have anything predicted at this point, or sorry, we don't have anything leaked at this point. Oh, and the LCD on the top, this time around, it's going to be color. Now, in terms of what color means, I don't know, because if you remember back to the 80s, we had our first color monitors, and the only difference between a color monitor and a monochrome or a black and white was you had one color, orange or green or something else. So hopefully it is a really nice display, and I don't doubt that it isn't going to be. I do believe that the Canon EOS R1 is going to have dual CF Express Type B card slots, but according to what Canon Rumors put out in their recent post is they're hearing some sources saying it's going to have a Type C card. At least one port's going to be Type C. And I think I might know the source of that. If you remember back to April the 1st, April Fool's Day, I put out a leaked video. Well, not really a leaked video. I put out a video about supposed leaked specifications of the Canon EOS R1. And I talked it up. I talked it up really well to I think it was right around the 16 or 17 minute mark. Then you finally let on that this was an April Fool's joke, but there might be a few people who took that and thought that maybe the R1 is getting a CF Express Type C card slot. Now, what Canon could do that I think would be far more important is if they started supporting Gen 4. And if they supported Gen 4, then that would give CF Express Type B the same throughput, the same speeds as CF Express Type C, at least on Gen 3. And then that way we don't have to go to that bigger size. But at this point, I'm going to call CF Express Type B. I mean, do we really want to be interchanging different size storage? I certainly don't think so. The EOS R1 is going to be coming out in some sort of drawn out affair, probably starting, well, they'll probably start leaking it late January and start teasing. Maybe Canon USA will leak out, or not leak out, put out a teaser, maybe do a development announcement, maybe Canon Japan will do something else, and maybe Canon Australia, and basically follow the same sort of, well, process that they followed for the EOS R5 when it came out. Canon Japan came out with a development announcement 4 or 5 weeks later. Canon Australia said the king is back and gave some more information. And then it was finally at NAB 2020 that Canon really let everything out of the bag, saying, yep, nope, 8K RAW, all IBIS, uncropped, with autofocus, every mode. And we were all kind of like, what's the catch? 2 minutes of recording? And actually, prior to firmware 1.1, in some cases, if you were playing around in the photo side, that is exactly what you got. But today, you can record unlimited 8K RAW at 30 frames per second. Just make sure you have that LCD out and auto temp off, set to high. I believe that's the setting. Now, when it comes to the video specifications of this camera, according to Canon Rumors, the cinema team is going to be working on these specs. They're going to be working on the codecs. And that has me a little bit interested. Now, this is the same team that worked on the R5C. So does that mean, like the R5C, we're going to be able to switch it over to video and have a cinema OS? That we're going to get cinema codecs? That we're going to be able to do at least 8K 60? You know what? This has me a little bit excited. That means waveforms and vector scopes and all that sort of stuff. But the only thing we have from Canon rumors at this point is that, as they're being told, it's going to be worked on by the cinema team. So let's take a stab. Let's see if we can fill in the blanks. The Canon EOS R5C can do 8K 60. The Nikon Z8 and the Nikon Z9 can also do 8K 60. I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that the Canon EOS R1 will also do 8K 60. The only thing I wonder is, will Canon push it to 100 and 120 frames per second? And you see, if Canon wants to be the master of everything, I think that certainly makes sense. Let's take up the R1, let's give it 8K 100 and 120 frames per second. And for that, we definitely need that Digic 11 image processor and a stacked sensor. That's one way to get the biggest bang for the buck out of those video specifications, because I think Canon with the R5 Mark II is going to give that camera, they have to give that camera 8K 60 frames per second. But when it comes to 4K, right now we have 4K HQ on the R5, and that's 8K oversample 4K at 24, 25, and 30 frames per second. What I really hope to see and what I expect is that the R1 will be able to do 8K oversample 4K at 24, 25, and 30 frames per second, but also 50 and 60 frames per second. But the question is, will Canon push a little bit higher and give us 100 and 120 frames per second in 8K oversample 4K? We'll just have to wait and see, but that's a prediction. It's certainly a definite maybe, and there's also a chance that Canon might push the slow-mo rate past 120 frames per second in 4K, maybe give us 150, 180, or even 240. I certainly think 150 or 180 are plausible, but 240? I don't know, that seems to be touching on the cinema line. One thing I really do want to see, and they did this with the R5C, but none of Canon's other hybrid cameras can do this, and that's 8K oversample 1080. So basically full sensor readout 1080, and that would give us incredibly sharp 1080. The level of sharpness, the level of detail you would get with full sensor readout 1080 would rival the, C100, the C200, and C300 when it comes to 1080. It would be so good that for a lot of situations, you probably wouldn't even need to shoot in 4K. And who knows, maybe for me on this channel, I'll test that out, because if I can shoot with really high detailed full sensor readout 1080 and it's really detailed, I'll put out videos and see if, the detail's there. And of course, if the cinema team is going to be working on this camera, I really do expect to see some of the same codecs that we see on the R5C. I'm still not sure if we're going to get that photo video switch where it's going to go from the stills hybrid camera over to the cinema camera. I would like to see what Canon did with I think the 1DC, this is going back many years, to basically come out with two versions of the R1 and the R1 DC, or the R1V, a video-centric version where it has the cinema OS. But the other one borrows off of the R5. It gives us a truly stills hybrid camera operation, so we don't have to take several seconds to switch back and forth. And for those of us that like to shoot video but not do it all the time, you don't have to learn a whole new operating system. And of course, stills, we don't know the frame rate for continuous shooting at this point, but I'm willing to bet 30 frames per second lossless RAW. Better dynamic range, better low light performance with a stacked sensor. So to be able to shoot 30 frames per second, having that stacked sensor works in so many different ways, and I certainly think it's possible to get 30 frames per second lossless RAW. I do believe there will be a limit on how many shots you can get, but for those of you that shoot continuous frames or continuous high-speed shooting at high resolution, 45 megapixels, like I have with the R5, most of the times I'm more than happy enough in the mechanical shutter, and when I do shoot electronic, I'm usually holding down that shutter button for fractions of a second. It is rare that I'm going to hold down for 2 or 3 seconds, but I imagine for Olympic shooters, there might be a need for 2 or 3 seconds, so I'm really curious to see what Canon does here. But that's really all we have. That's my summary of the Canon EOS R1. If you want to stay up to date on all the latest news and rumors regarding the Canon EOS R1, the EOS R5 Mark II, or the firmware update for the Canon EOS R5, then go ahead and subscribe, but make sure you also choose all notifications. And if you want to stay up to date on all the minor news and rumors, all those stories that aren't quite big enough to have, their own separate video, go ahead and follow me on Twitter, this address here. I also put out pricing information, and while there's amazing deals on right now for the Canon EOS R5, $500 off, plus a free battery grip. You're looking at $33.99 with the BG-R1 at Adorama and B&H. You're seeing the Nikon Z6 Mark II, Z7 Mark II on sale, $300 and $400 off, $500 off for Panasonic, the S1H. And there's a lot of deals on Sony's, $700 off the A7 III with a 24-70 f4. But now we're getting up ready for Prime Day, so that starts tomorrow, I believe, or today at midnight Eastern Standard Time. But what I'm seeing for really the first time in force is we're seeing all these other companies coming out with, well, Black Friday-like deals right in the middle of Prime deals, so Amazon Prime Day deals. And what they're doing is they don't want Amazon to take away with all these deals, so keep your eye out at Amazon.com, B&H, as well as Adorama and your local camera store for some really great deals, because I'm getting a sense we're going to see some really great deals. And even today, I was noticing at Amazon.ca here in Canada that the Samsung Evo 870 is 25% off, $297 Canadian. So we're seeing a really good deal on, that's a 4 terabyte, by the way, 4 terabyte Samsung Evo drive, $297. That's a very good deal, especially with where our dollar's at. So I will tweet out whenever I see stuff, but you probably want to be checking what's going on at your favorite retailer, because if you're looking for storage, and even Angelbird's on sale right now too. Look at their 1 terabyte CF Express Type B card, SE 1 terabyte, $299, and that's the regular price. 1.3 gigabytes per second. 1.48 gigabytes per second on their 330 gigabyte card. I'm laughing because everything's going up in price. The price we pay for food, for cars, for fuel, cable packages, internet, cameras and storage seem to be bucking that trend, especially thanks to Angelbird, Canon, and all the major camera companies. It's nice to get a break for once in a while, but that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.